More than 24 Palestinian journalists have called for fellow journalists to boycott the White House Correspondents Association dinner. They say the Biden administration is complicit in Israel's systematic killing of Palestinian journalists. Since Israel's war on Gaza began last October, the Israeli military has killed 142 media workers and journalists. 40 Palestinian journalists have been arrested by the Israeli military, and the Committee to Protect Journalists says that 2023 was the deadliest year for journalists in a decade. 3/4 of the journalists killed worldwide were Palestinians reporting on the war in Gaza. Now to Al Jazeera's Hind Khudari. Hind, you're joining us over the phone from Deir al-Balah in central Gaza. You're one of the signatories of the letter that has called on the White House, the U.S. White House correspondents to boycott tonight's dinner. I don't know whether you were able to hear that interview with Shihab. I'm going to keep it simple. You have been through something that, in covering this war since day one, that very few journalists on earth have ever experienced, and that includes war correspondents. Why don't you tell us what it's been like for you to cover this war?
Well, I don't know if I have the words to describe what I have been going through since October 7. This is not something that has been ending. It has been continuous every single day for more than 200 days. We have been killed, displaced, homeless, and we're not only reporting on this, but we're also living it with every single detail. We're living this war in all aspects of life. We have not been seeing our families as journalists. We have not been able to eat well. We have been dehydrated. We have been not having offices. We have been reporting in one of the most harsh conditions like any reporter could go through, and we're still reporting despite losing a lot of colleagues, and it hurts our souls and our hearts every single day. We have been a target. We have been constantly targeted by the Israeli airstrikes and Israeli shelling. A week ago, Sami Shihab, our colleague, was targeted with an artillery shelling. He got his leg amputated in the same exact moment the tanks fired at him. He lost his leg. He has been calling to leave the Gaza Strip, but there has been no response because he needs medical treatment. All of these daily things we have been living in as journalists are overwhelming, are exhausting us, but we still continue because there has been at least 100 Palestinian journalists who I personally know that have been killed since October 7. And if they were here today with us, they would be reporting and they would be raising the voice of the voiceless Palestinians living under genocide for more than 200 days.
If you count journalists and media workers, the number is 142 killed since the beginning of the war. Hind, is there any way, whether it's for you or any other journalist in Gaza at the moment, to do your job without taking an extraordinary risk? Is there any way to do this in a way that is safe, where you don't think in the morning, I don't know if I'm coming back home tonight?
I don't know if I will continue this call with you. It's to this extent. I don't know if I'm going to hang up this call and go and sleep and wake up in the morning. There's no guarantee that a Palestinian journalist, a Palestinian media worker, or any other Palestinian currently living in the Gaza Strip won't be targeted. We have been constantly being targeted. We are risking our lives. We're risking our lives to report to the world what's currently happening. Everyone has been relying on Palestinian journalists for videos, for photos, where we've been also being killed. And like everyone is neglecting the fact that Palestinian reporting on the ground are humans, like literally neglecting the fact that we are humans. We have stories to tell. We have personal lives. We have families. Boycotting the White House Correspondents' dinner is a no-brainer. I can't believe, like, after 7 months of this genocide, we are still convincing people that they should boycott this dinner. Like, the root of all of this has been, like, press institutions that need to contend the fact that they are making money from reporting on the death of Palestinians, and they refuse the name, like they literally are refusing to name like the killers and they're currently dehumanizing Palestinians and dehumanizing Palestinian stories every single day.
Okay.
And this is like really hurting Palestinians and also Palestinian media workers.
And Hind, just so you know, as you say this and as we listen to your words, we're also seeing the pictures, the live shot right now of this protest outside the Hilton Hotel in Washington, where Biden is set to address journalists at this dinner a few hours from now, I believe. It's interesting. Your words are interesting, and they're playing out over these pictures of protesters who basically agree with your point. Hind, thank you so much for staying up for us. I know it's very late where you are, almost 1:30 a.m., and thanks for your work since the beginning of this war. Ahmed Shihab Elin is a journalist, also a signatory of the open letter calling on colleagues to boycott the White House Correspondents Association dinner. You're joining us live from Vienna. The letter says, Ahmed, that for journalists to rub shoulders with the president is whitewashing the administration's role in genocide. Talk to us about that.
Well, Cyril, it's been 6 months of mass murder every day. It's really, at this point, in my mind, unacceptable to stay silent out of fear or, professional concern, while we're seeing journalists in Gaza continue to be not just killed, but detained, tortured, and even their families killed. We know President Biden will be speaking at the White House Correspondents' dinner tonight. We know he'll likely mention threats to journalists around the world. I do wonder, and I wonder if our colleagues at, my former colleagues at Al Jazeera, yourself included, will he mention Israel's murder of Shireen Abu Akleh and the more than 142, as you mentioned, Palestinian journalists and media workers who've been killed? For me, the White House Correspondents' dinner, maybe some of your viewers might not know, it's really an embodiment of a big problem with U.S. media, the trading of journalistic ethics for access. And to attend, in my mind, is to normalize, as you said, to sanitize, quoting the letter, and to whitewash the administration's role. I mean, principal journalists should boycott the White House Correspondents' annual dinner in solidarity. Journalism is, at its core, its most powerful purpose is to hold the powerful to account. It's about afflicting the comfortable and comforting the afflicted.
Ahmed, just a word, since you mentioned Shireen, something I should say in the interest of full disclosure. We're at Al Jazeera directly impacted, of course, by this story. Shireen Abu Akleh was one of our veteran reporters. She was killed in the occupied West Bank. It was well before this war. At the time, Israel had said it wasn't them. The investigation ended up showing, as we'd said from the beginning, that it was indeed an Israeli sniper bullet that killed her. And there have been multiple Al Jazeera journalists who have been either killed or wounded in Gaza since the beginning of this war. So we are directly impacted by this story. Going back to you now, the letter says Western media has played an integral role in manufacturing consent for Israel. Explain that.
I mean, just to provide context to that truth, if you juxtapose the Western media's belligerently biased, in my opinion, coverage of Gaza, I mean, it's not been discreet. It's been deliberate and disgraceful, especially the regurgitating of talking points, the framing, the lack of context, the passive voice, as we've heard from some of your other guests tonight. But to explain it more simply, I mean, how can I put it? More children, Surreal, as you know, were killed by Israel in Gaza in just 165 days than were killed in all other global conflicts over the past 4 years. Most of those conflicts where journalists were allowed, international journalists, I should say, were allowed to cover it. I mean, the Western media has explicitly and repeatedly framed October 7th as a terrorist attack. Yet they've portrayed the dozens and dozens of October 7ths that Israel has been unleashing on Gaza for more than 6 months now, killing tens of thousands of civilians. I mean, the overwhelming majority we know of those killed by Israel are children and women. So, when I appear in interviews like this in the West, maybe this can also provide some explanation. I mean, I'm always expected to condemn the killing of Israelis October 7th, but Western or Israeli guests are rarely, if ever, asked on those same broadcast outlets to condemn Israel's killing of innocent civilians in Gaza. So I think that tells you all you need to know.
So in light of that, just before I let you go, Ahmed, real quick, since you would like to see the White House correspondents boycott this dinner, and there's no indication that they are boycotting. In fact, we're seeing them enter the room. We're seeing the live footage now. If you were a White House correspondent, imagine you had access to the U.S. president, you were interviewing him. What would you ask Joe Biden?
I don't know if he'd be able to handle a simple question, but why don't Palestinians deserve the same rights as any other human being, including Israelis?
All right. Okay. Ahmed Shihab Elin, Palestinian-American journalist and filmmaker, signatory of the letter that we've been talking about. Thank you very much for your time today.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.